Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? So I'm Gareth, as was said. I'm co-founder at Fika. Today, Fran and I are going to be sharing some insights from a recent piece of research that we've done with you. At Fika, our mission over the last 4 or 5 years has been to understand the behaviours that we need to drive to enable well-being as an outcome. So we haven't focused on well-being as an objective. We focused on trying to understand the behaviours that can be created that drive well-being and many other outcomes. I founded Fika as a result of 2 cancer diagnoses and leaving my previous role as a result of burnout. So I've always been very passionate around the fact that life happens to all of us and how can we help people be in the best position to cope with life when it inevitably manifests in the ways that it does. I'm just going to hand over to Fran, who's going to be leading the presentation, and I'll be supporting with some extra insights as we go through.
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks for coming here and joining us today. So I'm Fran, I'm head of psychology at Fika. I guess I'm a slightly different head of psychology than what you might find in other companies in this space, in that my specialism is as a sport and exercise psychologist. So for many years before Fika, I worked with athletes and coaches. And basically as a sports psychologist, your role is to map out the challenges that athletes are going to face as part of their career, and you put training in place to help them better cope with those challenges. So it's always about being on the front foot, about preparation, rather than reacting to situations that might not have gone particularly well after the event. So as well as being a sports psychologist, I also lectured in universities for many years, and I guess about 4 years ago I had a bit of an epiphany. That makes it sound, like I was struck by a lightning bolt. It wasn't quite like that, but I had a bit of an epiphany because Monday to Friday I was working as a lecturer, and evenings and weekends I was moonlighting as a sports psychologist. And when I was going in to the university Monday to Friday, I really started to notice that a lot of my students, they were kind of struggling. They were struggling to balance the many demands on them. The fees had just gone up. A lot of them were working 20 hours a week. It was really tough for them. And I guess my epiphany was that I was doing a lot of work in the evenings and weekends helping athletes prepare for the various life challenges that they were going to face, but I wasn't doing the same with the students that I was teaching. And often a lot of our provision in universities was fairly reactive in nature, so there was nothing, or there was, right, we're going to recommend you to go to counselling. We didn't necessarily put training in place. So I have a real passion for basically putting training and skills development in place for people before the various challenges that they face in life. And that's really what mental fitness is all about, preparation, mapping out the challenges that we face so we can be better prepared for them. Because ultimately, we're all performers, even if we're not in the swimming pool or sports track or pitch, we're all performers. We all get thrown things at life, like Gareth says, and we all need to be prepared for those things to offset the risk of mental health decline. So it's about being on the front foot. And really, when Gareth and I first started with Fika, Gareth before me, we really looked at the mental health and wellbeing landscape, firstly in education, so we started in universities and then in the workplace. And we really asked ourselves, are we actually experiencing a wellbeing problem, or is it a skills problem? Do we have a skills gap, a mental skills gap? Are people necessarily having the skills that enable them to cope well with the challenges that they face in life? We know that one of the leading causes of mental health decline is an inability to cope with life's challenges. So why don't we put training in place before those things rather than react to them afterwards? And we've really worked hard to change mindsets around this space. So we've done a lot of work with our PhD research team, really looking at the mental skills that enable people to cope better with the challenges that they face in life, and looking at various models of performance, well-being. We've also got a PhD researcher who is conceptualizing the mental skills that enable somebody to cope better with life's challenges. We've identified 7 mental skills that if we train these, we're going to be better prepared for life's challenges. Now, certainly from mine and Gareth's point of view, what we really noticed in many provisions was that a lot of energy is put into stress management. So if you look at a lot of provisions out there, it's stress management. And actually, we don't necessarily look at the other skills that might have caused that to happen in the first place. So if I'm not able to focus, I'm more likely to get stressed. So we really looked at changing that mindset, and that was something you felt really strongly about as well.
Yeah, I think what we have to recognise is we look at those and we might say they're soft skills. Like, you look at the soft skills, connection, ability to focus, to be motivated, to stay, all these things are actually essential to how we work together as teams every day. So in my previous role, I was a partner in a consulting firm, and I was working through the dreaded digital transformation era, and I'm sitting there with teams focusing on technology, yet sitting there understanding that this team actually, are they even prepared to embrace change? Are they terrified of what this change is going to bring about? That technology isn't going to make a difference because these people don't have the right mindset to embrace it collectively as a team. And we're doing the similar kind of challenge with mental health and well-being, is we're focusing on mental health and well-being as an objective. It isn't an objective, it's an outcome. It's an outcome of changing processes, business practices, working how teams change together to create those positive behaviours. So if you look at myself, my previous role, I remember just before I left, walking into a meeting room, closing the door behind me, getting down, hands in my head, and just breaking down in tears. I did not have the resources to cope with the demands that I was putting on myself or that were being placed on me. If someone had come into the room at that time and told me to be vulnerable, they would have been sworn out of the room. Because what we don't recognise is the fact that the behaviours need skills. So to be vulnerable takes a load of confidence. You have to be really, really confident to be able to go out and be vulnerable. You have to be in a culture, in a team where the connection skills are high, so that you feel like you will actually be listened to through that vulnerability. So what we have to do is unpick this back to root causal skills that enable the behaviours to happen in the first place. And what we're going to share with you now is some national research that we've conducted, and hopefully some insights from that and what we found into how your teams, your people are working together every day.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna skip us on to so. Within the last 3 months, we did a big survey of workers in the UK. We had a relatively even split of men and women across different industries, different levels, etc. So we recruited, this always makes me laugh, 1,001. I don't know why it wasn't 1,000, but 1,001 UK workers. And what we were really interested to understand was what the mental skills profile was of these workers. Now, what we identified, so when you think about those 7 mental skills, we identified that fundamentally 54% of UK workers do not have the mental skills to cope with the organisational pressures that they're faced under. And as a result, they don't necessarily have the mental skills to work effectively with their teams. How did we know this? Well, for any mental skill, we look at the mindset. Does the individual believe that this is a skill that can be trained? Are they engaging in training behaviours that's going to lead to the development of that skill? And then finally, do they have the self-efficacy, confidence to apply that skill under pressure? And what we found was that fundamentally 54% of UK workers have this skills gap, this mental skills gap. What this means, maybe figures that we're a bit more familiar with, is that it kind of translates to markers of well-being. So we also found that 59% of UK workers were experiencing high levels of burnout, specifically exhaustion. So we looked at the benchmarks of an existing burnout measure there. So this gap in skills was associated with the high increases in burnout. That then led to a translation to workplace engagement. So over a quarter of UK workers had really low engagement in their work. So those high levels of burnout, lack of skills, meant that they didn't necessarily feel engaged in their work. And then critically as well, 51% then didn't feel that they were part of a team that was capable of managing unexpected challenges. So we have a fundamental skills gap, which is translating to various markers of well-being and workplace engagement.
Yeah, and I think if we then, that's compounded by a series of other factors. So we surveyed remote and hybrid managers to ask them what they thought the biggest challenges facing their teams are at the moment. This is what they said. Number 1, effective communication. Number 2, productivity. Number 3, motivating my team. Number 4, team cohesion. Number 5, burnout and overworking. So again, the importance there of the soft skills. We're going to talk in a minute about teams. Winning teams, performance psychology, winning teams do not just happen. If you just put a team together and expect them to go out and perform on game day, they won't. If they don't know how to play to each other's strengths and weaknesses, they don't communicate effectively. It's like that is what we have to create if we want to build wellbeing outcomes. We have to enable teams to manage the challenges at work. If you can just click on one slide, because we all know that, and all the data shows, work is the problem. The leading causes of declining mental health at work are work. When you ask people, it's not going anywhere. Pressure from targets, workload, lack of support, negative work relationships. These are systemic issues that are about our skills, our collectiveness as a team to be able to work together every single day. Next slide, Fran. So yeah, when I said before, and if we focus on well-being, mental health as an outcome, what that means is we typically we'll send out emails about mental health, we'll send out emails about well-being, we're focusing on that outcome. 84% of the people we surveyed did not know what was there. They didn't know the well-being benefits, they didn't know the mental health benefits, 84% of people. So what we have to do is embed systemic skills practices into work, because it's work that's the problem.
Yeah, so we adopt a training approach. So we are a digital provision, but we offer a skills development training approach to this area, I guess, rather than a well-being benefits approach. So if we just go back to this figure, this 54% of workers, don't necessarily have the mental skills to cope with the challenges. This is where we invest our energy and our efforts. But what we know is that any psychologist who's really worth their salt can create an intervention that works. So any psychologist who's good value can do that. The real challenge is actually creating an intervention or a solution that people use. So as Gareth said before, if 84% don't even know things are there, your reach there is minimal reach really. So what we have to do is adopt a really cultural approach, and this is something you really have spoken a lot about.
Yeah, I think if we, as it says here, culture change, content doesn't drive behaviour change. It's not a content availability problem that we're facing into. The internet is full of content created by amazing people all over the place. It's fantastic. Most people don't use it. It's a behaviour change problem, not a content availability problem. So what we have to address is behaviour. So again, culture is driven by two things: shared belief systems, but it's all well and good having a shared belief system, but then if your behaviours don't manifest that shared belief system, then you don't have the desired cultural impact. So if you just click on one. So everything that we are inspired by, the Swedish concept of Fika, for anyone that doesn't know, it's a Swedish tradition. It's about taking time out usually over coffee and sweet buns. Sadly, we can't digitize those yet, but it's about taking time out for a positive habit. And that always inspired us because it happens as part of work. The IKEA plant stops for Fika, the Volvo plant stops for Fika. It's a cultural norm that happens as part of that practice. So how can we create the time, the structure, the format, and the permission for teams to build these skills as part of work every day through what they're doing in their normal practices? Let's click on, Fran.
Yeah, so this is something that I felt really passionately about. So working as a sports psychologist, for many years, I would often get booked in for the graveyard slot, So you'd be at a training weekend and you'd be on at 7 p.m. on a Saturday night, after the athletes have trained all day. Now, obviously, you're not getting much back from them at that point, and they're not really taking much in. And something that really, I guess I learned a lot as a sports psychologist was that the best sports psychology generally was integrated into the things that they were already doing. So you would try and do your sports psychology at the side of the pitch. You would do it in and around the training environment. It wasn't happening in a separate room, in a separate building from where everything else was happening. And at Fika, that's what we've tried to do with our skills development. We integrate it into normal working practices. If you want to reach people, that's where you have to do it, because people have many priorities. Adding any new behaviour into your life is difficult. That's why there's something like 25% of people are physically inactive, even though we know the benefits of physical activity. So we have to bring it into normal working practices. It's got to be outcome focused. So certainly as a sports psychologist, your solutions have to be tangible. They have to link to a thing that somebody already wants to achieve in that particular context. So we offer team training and individual training. Team training, we've created solutions which you can come and see at the stand, where you can kick off meetings, close off meetings with mental fitness training that you do as a collective, you do as a group. Individual training, we create a range of skills development courses that plug into the natural milestones that you work through as a worker in your company. So we had some examples in onboarding, we've got courses for onboarding, we've got courses for people going for promotions, so on and so forth. So you catch them where there's an outcome that they want to achieve.
Yeah. I'm mindful of time, so I think if we skip on to the next one. I think we're going to send this round. You can read it afterwards. But I think what we've tried to map here is that the soft skills aren't soft. We all know that, right? The World Economic Forum says they're top skills for 2030. That's because AI is going to take the longest to replace them. It's like they're really important. They're really important in how we work together as teams, as individuals, and there are huge business benefits to culturally having these skills. People more open to speak up, more psychological safety, abilities to manage stress, to support each other. Again, we'll send this round afterwards for people to see. And yeah, those benefits really are at 3 levels. So teams feel more trust and inclusion. We use the term collective efficacy. That stat Fran showed before, 51%. 51% of people don't believe they're part of a capable team. Just think about that for a minute. And the challenges we're facing into, how do we build that collective efficacy? Individuals are more prepared, more positive to cope with things before they happen. And again, as an organisation, we're about not just reducing risk, but about increasing key measures of positive outcomes as well. We just skip on. So we've got time.
We've got time.
Yeah, we've got time.
Yeah. Okay. So you can actually see our on the stand. You can actually see this is a proper thing. But this is an example of one of our activities that we would do with teams. So it's normally called the Friday Fess Up, but it's been scribbled out by Gareth because it's Tuesday. This is an example of an activity that we encourage teams to do to basically improve their confidence and communication and basically psychological safety and normalising the fact that we all make mistakes. And actually, is it not better to create a culture where we can talk about them, move forward from them, rather than burying them? It's certainly in sport, this was always a big issue that we had, where athletes would be really reluctant to talk about mistakes and things like that. So we try and get teams into the habit of doing this. So at Fika ourselves, we do it every Friday in our different teams. We talk about something that didn't go so well that week that we want to change. I am mindful that we want to have some questions though. So that's an example, but you can see it. So has anybody got any questions? Time got really faster probably there.
I think what we'll just finish with is if you come see us at the stand, we've created all of the insight into an infographic that we can send out to you. So you have that as insight summary and a white paper as well. So come and see us and we can share that information with you. Hopefully what we aim to set out here was really just potentially change the perspective on how we think about the problem that we're trying to solve. Fran and I could talk about this all day. So please, any questions that you may have.